Welcome to DU Digimon.
Hello and welcome to DU Digimon, and welcome back to a Monday deck profile, hot off the heels of our latest Jank Tank 3, in which there were no deck profiles last week to make room for our jankingly good times. If you have not checked out Jank Tank 3, there will be a link in the description in order for you to go and check that out. For the kind of the playlist of the kind of previous Jank Tanks we've had, as well as, of course, Jank Tank 3. But what we're going to be doing today, and it's actually going to be a tradition we're now going to start doing, is we're going to give a little bit of time to the deck that won Jank Tank 3. And for last time, I won Jank Tank 3. Go me! And the deck I used to play last time was Marsmon. Marsmon has been a deck I've played since BT11 with the original kind of Birds and Beasts deck, and I figured, because as according to our tier list voted on by both us in the group at DU Digimon and also you guys, the viewers, we decided that both Birds and Marsmon belonged in Jank tier, so therefore I double janked it and did this deck, and actually it went really well. A lot of that was matchup dependent and luck, I'll be honest. So our first match against Vademon, we just had a very favourable matchup, having a lot of raid shenanigans to be able to clear off his stuff before he could kind of really get going. Got very lucky against Alex playing Red Purple Imperial Dramon, given that deck can just blitz you off of the face of the planet. But luckily he never got his ball rolling, and I was able to kind of take him out before he could kind of get anywhere. And then the last match was against Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon was the only match where I lost a game, and again that was down to a lot of luck. Game 3 is what really clinched that match for me, because Dane couldn't quite get into that right rhythm with Sakuyamon, not finding plugins at the right time, not finding certain pieces. All that sort of stuff. But let's get into the deck profile for Marsmon. So this is it's similar to the BT15 Pure Birds deck, but it's also a little bit different as well. So the similarity right off the get is 4 copies of the new BT15 Yokomon. Return 1 Digimon card with avian, bird, beast, animal, or sovereign other than sea animal in one of its traits from your trash to the hand. Now, just going to say, because I hate saying all of those traits, from now on, I will just be saying the aforementioned traits, and you will know what I mean by the aforementioned traits. But basically, this just lets you do a lot of getting your pieces back. Also triggers off one of our main tamers in this deck as well. Just a really, really, really great egg. If you wanted to play something different, you could have a go at playing the BT14 Koromon, especially with some ideas kind of going with this deck in the future. Where essentially there were certain things I wanted to do for Jank Tank, but because of the rulings of Jank Tank, bearing in mind this deck was made for those specific rulings that we have in place, there were certain cards I couldn't play and certain ideas I couldn't do, but some that I'd love to experiment. And BT14 Koromon is part of that, so that ability to, when you remove, you draw, because we do have quite a few different ways of removing security without actually even touching security. So we've got obviously the trashing effect of Grappleomon, who we'll get into later, as well as also the potential trashing effect of Phoenixmons on play, that sort of thing. So that's something that could be played around with, and I'll kind of get into some more kind of tech card options as we go on. But next up, we've got our rookies. We've got 4 copies of Bearmon. You can't be playing a Marsmon deck without Bearmon. Gives you 3000 DP when you change your attack target, which is fantastic. That is only on your turn, so it doesn't work if you're playing blockers, but if you're doing raid, it's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. If you wanted to play something different to this, I could recommend maybe, I think it's the ST7 Ogumon, the one that's 2000 when you attack a player, because technically when you're attacking in with raid, you attack to a target and then you switch targets. So if you're attacking the player first, you will gain that 2000 DP before you technically declare raid. So you could very well do that. Also might work if you wanted to play that Ogumon, that could work with one of the tech cards I'm going to go into later on, that I wanted to play in this build, but because of our rulings for Jank Tank, was not allowed. Next up for the rookie slot, We've got 4 copies of BT15 Biomon. Start of main, you trash one of the aforementioned traits, and then you reveal top 4 and add any red card. So that's all of the cards in this deck, bar 2, which I'll get into, which you can add via that effect. Also, when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, gain 1 memory. And that came up so many times, that memory gain effect, to swing turn back to myself. It's actually, I tell you what, Marsmon has got some tricks. It's got some real tricks up its sleeve for a jank deck. I almost prefer this to just the normal birds deck. I might even prefer it at the moment. I think come BT16 I won't. It'll be purely birds again. But I might stick around with Marsmon for a bit and experiment with it a bit more, because I really like it. It's a really funny deck. Next up, 3 copies of, so we're only playing 11 rookies total, 3 copies of the BT11 Biomon, reveal top 3, add 1 red Digimon with vaccine. All of our Digimon are red and all of them have vaccine, which is fantastic, and 1 red tamer card among them to your hand. You also have the on deletion effect if you have a red tamer and play gain 1 memory, and obviously if we're getting deleted, it's not the biggest problem in the world, because we can recur using the Yokomon, gain a memory over here, which is really good. And that ability to add a red tamer is great, because we do play a fair share of red tamers. Most of our tamers are red, one of them is not. And also that red vaccine thing really comes up. I'm so glad this is actually a red vaccine adder and not a aforementioned traits adder, because it means that there's certain things we could play in this that were allowed and were deemed acceptable by Alex and Charles, who are kind of doing soft deck checks for us every Jank Tank to make sure no one's playing too much meta. We don't want a repeat of Jank Tank 2, where all of us were playing Quartzmon Turbo, essentially. Though, of course, Quartzmon itself is banned now. But also instances where, for example, Ogubond and Gabubond, if you're playing too much like X-Antibody or like good Greymon stuff, that's no longer allowed in Jank Tank, for example. Any thoughts on that would be great. As an Ogubond player, I would love to play some of my more regular Greymon stuff in that, but at the moment I'm not allowed. Anyways, we've got 3 copies of Grizzlymon next. Has raid, which actually does come up. I was able to use that raid to kind of do some just basic clearing at the beginning of the game, especially because we were able to kind of DP boost through kind of various means. The Bearmon, for example, one of our tamers did DP boost. 2 of our tamers, in fact, did DP boosts. So it just really comes up. Also has the same inheritable as the Bearmon to increase by 3,000 when an attack target is changed. So you can get some massive boys as long as you're in the right stack. Next up, 3 copies of BT15 Birdramon. When digivolving, you return 1 of your trashed aforementioned trait Digimon from the trash to the hand. So it helps with recurring your pieces. Triggers your tamer. That I mentioned earlier, and also has that same when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, gain 1 memory. Seriously cool. Really cool interaction with that memory gain in this deck. Next up, 2 copies of Saberdramon, who actually does have raid and can benefit from having the extra 3,000 from Bearmon, as well as some other things. Obviously, this doesn't necessarily need the DP boosts, because your main goal with this is for it to go raid retaliation into something and take it out, so it doesn't always need that DP boost. But if you wanted to let this survive and wait until you wanted to use retaliation on that retaliation, then you can boost it up, because it has got the raid and can do that attack target switch. Just bear in mind it's 3 to go into, so it is a little bit more on the expensive side compared to the other Digimon. And it does have a on deletion, which is great. Return 1 red or purple Digimon card from the trash to the hand, which again triggers one of our tamers, so really good card. Next up, 2 copies of BT1 Birdramon. I essentially wanted to have as many kind of ways of boosting our attack potency in this, and we do have ways of cheating this out to get that on play. So one of our level 6s can play this out, one of our tamers can play this out, and then it can just come out, give you security attack +1, and just make you having a bit more aggression, a bit more potency to your offense. Makes us less of a raid control deck and more of like an aggro control. So we're not just chipping one at a time, we're chipping multiples. Next up, we're going into the ultimate slot. So our level 5s, we've got 4 copies of Grapleomon. Again, has raid and can get massive. If you've got both Bearmon and Grizzlymon underneath this guy, he goes up to 13k, which is huge for a level 5. He also has the very important inheritable of when this Digimon's attack target is switched, trash the top card of your opponent's security set. So that's literally on, if you go, I'm attacking into player, but then I'm going to attack into one of your Digimon, you do that attack target change, or you get blocked, you trash one of their security. It's just great. It's a really cool card. You know, a little bit slow without some of the sec +1 kind of shenanigans that we've got going on. But honestly, great card for this deck. I love it. Then next cards, I'm going to unveil all 4 of them together, despite the fact they're technically 2 different cards. But I've got BT7 Metal Greymon at 2 and BT9 Metal Greymon X at 2. So despite the fact that this is a very meta-relevant Greymon card, I was allowed to play this in the deck because purely for the fact that I'm playing this Metal Greymon instead of anything else. But in terms of this deck, this Metal Greymon is fantastic. So it does have an on-play effect. If you have a Tamer in play, you gain 2 memory, so it essentially costs 5 to play it, to hard play it. And if you don't have a Tamer, you can play a red Tamer without paying its memory cost. And I actually decided to play this specifically over Garudamon Ace, because I figured to myself, this can let us play a Retainer. We can also get more DP and get more security tap +1 by having Metal Greymon X on top of it. And on top of that, it does have a that when one of your opponent's Digimon is deleted, gain 1 memory, which does come up because our main kind of shtick, if you will, is to raid, delete people's Digimon. So therefore, that inheritable comes up. So I decided to play this little Metal Greymon engine, if you will, over the Garudamon. Yes, it does mean we can't trash these guys for some of our effects, so we can't recur these pieces from the trash because they're not the aforementioned traits. We can't trash them in order to get our Biomon search. We can't play them out with one of our Tamers, but we can still search them with BT11 Biomon, and we can still search them with BT15. And that again, that ability to kind of go, okay, we're going into Metal Greymon, we're now going to go 0 into Metal Greymon X. We've got 3000 DP security tap +1, just really help with potency and kind of how much damage we're dealing, you know. Yeah, a great kind of little engine, I suppose, in this deck. You know, if you wanted to play just Garudamon Ace instead, absolutely go for it. But I actually think these 2 work really well with the tech cards I'd love to play in as well. Next up, we've got the star of the show, 4 copies of Marsmon. So Marsmon, I think, is actually quite underrated as cards go. BT11 had some surprising bangers, and I think Marsmon is one of them. He kind of got swept under the carpet by cards like, well, Blackwall Greymon X, for example. But I think he's a great card. You know, he's the first level 6 that had raid, and he uses it really well. It's just an inherent keyword on him. When digivolving, you get blitz, so if you go into him, you can then immediately go, okay, here we go, attack in, raid, let's start doing our shenanigans. When you do raid, and it's specifically when an attack target is switched, so again, that also triggers if you get blocked, you then gain memory for each red Tamer you have in play. So regardless of what stack you've got, you're either going to get absolutely massive because you're gaining DP, and then you may be able to swing turn to yourself. Or what I was finding was a really cool interaction was if you had BT15 Biomon, and then you also had BT15 Birdramon, and on top of that, Metal Greymon X, and then you went into your Marsmon, it was then a case of, okay, switch, raid, unsuspend, gain memory equal to the Tamers we've got. We deleted something in battle, gain 1 memory, you know, and then swing in after we've passed turn to ourselves, gain memory here. You know, again, that also works really well with the Grapleomon. So you go into your Grapleomon on top of this stack instead. You've then got swing, raid, attack target change, drop a security, gain 2 memory because something's been removed from their security. So I think that's a really cool interaction that may very well go under a lot of people's radar. But, you know, give Marsmon a go, guys. Like, I think this is actually a really fun deck. You know, is it going to be meta-defining? No. Will it do well against certain meta decks like Numamon or Leviamon? No. But in terms of your fun stuff, like if for example you guys do non-meta tournaments at your locals as well, then Marsmon's a great pick. Something that I wanted to play alongside him was actually BT14 War Greymon, who I'll flash up on screen. That ability to have raid and piercing and security attack +1, because bearing in mind we do have ties in this deck, I think would be really cool in this deck to try out. I think you'd need some more Ogremons in the rookie line, hence why I kind of explored into ST7 Ogremon earlier, just so you could also do that warp stuff as well. But I'd love to try that out as a potential kind of like purely like raid focused deck. It's a shame I can't do that in Jank Tank for two reasons. One, I was told off for using BT14 War Greymon in Ogibon in Jank Tank 1, so that's no longer allowed, because he's a more meta-defining card. And on top of that, Marsmon, because it won Jank Tank 3, is now banned from Jank Tank in general. So the whole deck is now banned. Although on that note, we never really figured out if we should also ban birds because of the similarity between the two decks. So, let us know. By the time this video comes out, Jank Tank 3 will have completely come out in its entirety. So just let us know what you guys think in regards to if birds should get banned as well. But going into our other level 6, it is just 2 copies of Phoenixmon. It does work really well. It keeps that birds beast kind of vibe from BT11, and this works a lot better than, I've got it to hand, so a lot better than the BT11 one, which originally came out alongside Marsmon, just because this is guaranteed to bring out something good with its when Digivolving effect, something with 5000 DP or less, or a red tamer. This one isn't always, yes, if it removes something from security, you could potentially play something bigger, but the thing is with this, it's kind of redundant because you've got Phoenixmon playing tamers and stuff with 5000, which, for example, our Sec +1 Birdramon is within that threshold, so we can play out that to give ourselves security attack +1. Also, this one's a little bit redundant now because of the new Sora tamer, who we'll get into in just a moment. Because she does the same job whilst also being a memory tamer, whilst also not potentially losing you a body. It's just a lot safer to go into this one. Plus, if you do manage to cheat this out as an on-play, or if it does get deleted, it has a slightly more useful ability than the Phoenixmon from BT11, because we can, depending on how much security they've got, either trash the top of their security, or we can delete something with the lowest DP, which if they've got a smaller board, can be something quite big. So Phoenixmon was definitely my pick. Like I say, I'd love to potentially swap out this for BT14 War Greymon and try that in this and make this purely like raid-focused deck. But we'll see. We'll see if I experiment with that at some point. Let me know if you guys want to see that on the channel. Next up, we're going into Tamers. 2 copies of Sora. I've talked about her enough. She's a memory tamer, which is fantastic, obviously, to make sure we're setting at 3 before we start doing our big shifts. Then also, if you return something from trash to hand, she actually allows you to play something out with 13,000 DP or less with the aforementioned traits. But depending on the amount of security your opponent has, you remove 2,000 from that effect. So if they've got 5 security, you can only play something with 3,000, for example. If they have 6 security, you can only play something with 1,000, which luckily all of the rookies are 1,000 bar, I think, Bearmon? Yeah, bar Bearmon. If they've got 7 security, you can't play anything. But, that's not the aim of the game. You want to be removing as much security as possible. And I think she's a really cool card in this deck. It's just kind of that she's the breath of fresh air that this deck needed. As memory tamers go, because her effect does bounce her to the hand to play something out, she doesn't always stick on the board as much as you would like. So in this deck, I do play another memory tamer who does have his own faults in terms of being a memory tamer, but we'll get into him in just a minute. But Sora is an absolutely phenomenal card. Our next tamer is 2 copies of Akiho from BT11. Helps us to search all of our red vaccine cards, and also when we do cheat stuff out via either Phoenixmon or Sora, she can give that aforementioned trait Digimon Rush, which really does come in handy. I believe won me a couple of my games in Jank Tank 3. Don't quote me on that. It definitely won me at least one game in that. But yeah, she's a great card. Even in birds, I wouldn't play her too much, just because you've got so much of a searching anyway that you don't necessarily need to, but the rush does come up, you know, and can be very, very handy just to finish off the game. Our next tamer is 2 copies of BT15 Tai. Start of main gives you one of your vaccine trait Digimon 2000 DP, and that is also just vaccine trait, so you could potentially play this guy in yellow vaccine if you wanted to for reasons unknown, and it would give you your 2000 DP. But the more important thing was for him is that when a card is removed from your own security stack, you suspend this tamer to gain a memory. So again, with the Bergermons, the Biomons, with the Metal Greymon, all these, with the Marsmon, you know, all of these memory gaining effects, you've got so many ways of swinging turn back to yourself, so you can then go back on the offensive. Really, really cool. Then our next tamer works really well in the in this deck because of the raid interactions, but unfortunately is completely unsearchable. And that is ST15 Tai. There is no way of searching him. You could potentially play Agumon from EX1, but you're playing so many other tamers that don't have the name Tai that you can't really. Like, I think if I was going to experiment with this whole raid War Greymon with Marsmon, you know, the ultimate war deck, I suppose, the Digimon of War, Mars, you know, the god of war in Roman myth, stolen from Ares of Greek mythology, but I won't get into that. And then along with War Greymon, it's in his name. I think you could potentially play that Agumon EX1, so you could help search out your other Agumons and then these guys. That could potentially be quite fun, but again, that's going to need some theory testing. But yeah, unfortunately, he is completely unsearchable, but if you draw into him and you play him, then he becomes your memory tamer that sticks on the board and gives you that 2000 DP when you're doing your raid shenanigans and more draw as well. So he does work really well synergistically with this deck, but he's just not searchable at all. So it's kind of similar to like Yuya in like a red-based Greymon deck, I suppose. Like, just draw into him. Just you know, that's all you need to do. Next up, we've got option cards. 2 copies of Wings of Love. Lets you play out one of your red tamers. So not you, but one of your red tamers for cost of nothing. And then if you've got Sora in play, you can actually return something from trash to hand, which then triggers the Sora and allows you to kind of start that whole ball game. Also has the security effect of playing a Biomon from your hand or trash without paying the cost, and then you add it to hand. So you've kind of got multiple ways of getting resources from this guy, from this card. Really, really great card. I actually should honestly play it at more copies. I think in this version 2 is fine, but in like Pure Birds I do want to play more copies of this. I just need to get more, but 2 does me fine at the moment. Next up, it wouldn't be a Digimon deck if we didn't have training cards. We've got 3 copies of Offense Training. Obviously a very strong card, obviously absolutely fantastic with that being able to search anything red, so it can search everything apart from this guy. You know, and also helps you do things more cheaply as well. Just training cards, what more can you say? And then the last 2 cards are kind of a flex spot, but I had reasons for playing it. Is 2 copies of Lightning Joust from ST7. This allows you to boost your Digimon up further by 2000, and then also gives you security attack +1 on your Digimon. But only that second part is only if your security stack is less than or equal to your opponent. So you need to make sure that they have more or equal to you. So if you've got this and you haven't gone on the offensive yet, slap it down, get yourself some more checks, you know. That potentially Marsmon can actually do, you know, I don't think it could OTK technically, but it could potentially, in a very rare scenario, do all of the checks needed to get rid of an opponent's security in one go. If you managed to play this, cheat that out, and then either had this to trash or this to gain security attack +1, I think potentially you could do it. Actually, could you? Maths. Security 1, 2, 3. No, you couldn't. Never mind. Don't believe me. But you can still do a lot of damage. You know, in that. But I think Lightning Just works really well. You could also play more like specific removal cards, like Trident Gaia or something like that. But I just find because we're playing like a raid deck, we don't really need to play those kind of removal cards. But you definitely could give it a go. But yeah, I've definitely had some theory crafting with this deck. I love this version that I've kind of cooked up and come up with. You know, obviously it did really well in Jank Tank 3, and is now no longer playable, so it will not be making an appearance again in Jank Tank. But we may very well play it just in general matches that may go up on the channel. You know, let me know if you want to see this deck again. Let me know if you want to see the version of in my brain that is kind of this plus Greymon shit. You know, maybe that might be a good deck. Who knows? Just let me know, and also let me know of any other kind of deck profile requests you guys have got going on. We're working on a couple of requests we've already had at the moment, but we're always happy to take requests and try and give them a go at some point. So just let me know, either in the comments below or on our DU Digimon Discord, which you can join in the description below. But I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Check out Jank Tank 3 if you haven't, guys. Spoilers, you know, this one. I probably should have said that at the beginning of the video, but yeah, whatevs. Anyways, until next time, keep it digital.